What is up, podheads? Back with another episode of the Podio Slay podcast. My name is Tony, joined as always by Anthony.
What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good.
This fine evening.
Yeah, I'm good. We're doing the intro for a conversation we had last week with JT Woodruff, Hawthorne Heights, return guest. They're out on tour right now for 20 years of If Only You Were Lonely. We dig into the record, we dig into the time frame for them, and a lot of other stuff too, right? It was a fun combo.
Yeah, a lot of it was like that time period. And that's what I love. Is like, yeah, we talk, touring and we talk the album and all that, but we're transported back to that time period where like a lot was shifting, technology coming into play. And we had them last on what, episode
220. Yep.
220. Yeah. And I remember loving that combo. And then when we said, hey, they're touring off If Only You Were Lonely, and it's been 20 years. It's like, yeah, let's get this guy back. Let's get JT back. Great guest.
Yeah, very thoughtful. Has a lot of experience now in the scene, having been around for a while, and people still resonate with the music, us included. So, pretty exciting to be able to bring that back to you and have him come back and chat with us for an hour. And yeah, I mean, just a hardworking band, right? I mean, they got their hands in all of the stuff they're doing, and they know what works for them, and they know what works for their fans, and we're here for all of it.
Yeah, and that was actually, to be honest with you, and I think I tell him that, that was one thing I forgot from the first combo. I remember the first combo a couple of years ago, going into it, not really realizing how hands-on they were. Like, they're in control of their whole domain, and they're still doing that. They even own their own screen printing plant. Like, it's all on their terms, and you kind of get that vibe thinking of this album too. If Only You Were Lonely, coming off massive success of Silence of Black and White, all that pressure. And then they deliver this album, which doesn't lean one way or the other. It's still them, obviously a little more mature. That's how I always looked at LP2 from them. It was like as they were getting older, you could hear it in the music.
Well, and it has tracks too, right? Like there's just some really great songs on here, really well-written songs, a couple of chances taken, and to be able to pull that off after having your biggest success out of the blue a couple of years prior, and now 20 years out, be able to still have people resonate with it, have people feel it and want to go see them on tour, and they're out right now. They're out on tour. So the rest of this month of March, you have a chance to see them all over the country, and there's probably going to be a second leg, kind of hinted at that new music. They're working on that. So they're, always busy in the Hawthorne Heights camp, and we're excited for all of it.
What is it? The Lonely World Tour, right?
Yeah.
Lonely World Tour. All through this month. When this drops on the 9th, right? They'll be in Minneapolis. And then it'll head to Denver, Utah, Idaho, Pacific Northwest, Cali, West Coast, then down to Arizona, Texas. So you can kind of see where it's going to go, leg two. You can see the...
Yep. And they're out with letlive and Creeper, and they're playing a show in June with Amberlin and Emery, and kind of a recreation of around the time 20 years ago when they went on tour for the record to begin with. So for Warped Tour, and I think they're playing in Warped Tour dates too. So yeah, lots of stuff for Hawthorne Heights fans. This is a fun combo with JT. If you are anywhere near where they're playing, get out and see them. If not, listen to us talk with JT right now.
All right, we are back with JT Woodruff of Hawthorne Heights. JT, how are you, man?
I feel pretty dang good for, being 20 years of shot out of a cannon, singing emo songs, living in Ohio. The weather's a little nuts right now. One day you wake up, it's 50 degrees. The next day you wake up, it's 12 inches of snow. But, that's probably what causes these songs to be so up and down, quiet and soft, loud and chaotic, But it's life in the Midwest. And I haven't left, so I guess I either like it or I'm
you're crazy.
Or I'm crazy, or I'm preordained, or it's destiny. I don't know.
Well, we live in Maine, so we are nuts. Like who would live in Maine?
I absolutely love Maine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, would you live there?
Yeah. I literally have been trying to talk my wife, Nikki FM, into buying, like a cabin up there to just get away to a more beautiful version of bad.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the summertime is nice. It's very nice
Yeah.
here in the summer. So we'll make an exception for you guys. You can come up here in the
All
summer.
right.
Typically, we're like, hey, leave us alone. Don't come up here. But you guys can come. We'd be
All
down
right.
for that.
I'm migratory. I want to be up there like birds.
Yeah, we'll give you the pass. We'll give you the Hawthorne Heights pass. You speaking of summer, we last chatted 2 years ago, almost
Yeah.
2 years ago,
Yeah.
which is crazy. I don't know where the time goes.
I don't know. And I think that like when you get, I don't know, we're probably to the age of when our parents started to discuss things like that. You know, when you're like young, you're like, this is taking forever. And when you're, you know, when you start to get some years under you, you start to say, shit, this is going by too fast now. But I think it's just because we're settled into the comfort zone of our lives and we're all just working hard, you know, whether it be at a traditional job or entertainment or a little bit of each, you know, throughout the day. And I think that you get to a certain age where you kind of just want to make your mark some way or another. You know what I mean? And I think that that's why now more than ever, people are just down to like get into it and to grind and to do whatever they have to find some sort of small level of comfort every day.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how quick time goes now. And you're right. When we were 20, 21, 22, and you had just put out Silence in Black and White, and time took forever. It was like, 6 months until that show. I don't know if I can wait that long. And now I'm like, 6 months, that's going to be here tomorrow. Everything goes so fast. And we're talking to you in between tours. You're going to be on tour again real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. And like now, since everything in 2026 is about If Only You Were Lonely, I've been unpacking all of that stuff. And the human brain is wild. So like it has the ability to go back in time, but also to compartmentalize and forget things until they need to be remembered, that sort of thing. And it's been a lot of that. You know, it's been a lot of looking through like basically old home movies because we didn't live in an Instagram world yet where we could just scroll back in our feed. So like I'm looking through things that are eliciting raw emotion, which is kind of the point. You know what I mean? To like take people back in time and take ourselves back in time. You don't realize how quick that time period went, but in the time, like when you were living it, you were just like, I don't want to say burn out, but like you're like going from tour to tour to tour to studio to tour to tour to tour to studio. And like now I would actually say that things move faster, but I'm more cognizant of it. So like when it's time for tour prep, which is what we're doing right now, like it happens quick, but I know it's going to. Back then you were just like plugging along, you know, because you thought everything would last forever. And but you know, now you know, like 20 years in, if everybody hasn't forgotten about you yet, they've had every opportunity to forget about
No
you.
shit.
You know, and so we've done something that has struck a nerve that's lasted a long time to at least some amount of people. And I think that that's where you realize how fun this is and how fortunate you are, and that's why you work hard on it, is to really just like maintain this beautiful little corner of the world that we've created. And that to me, like, you know, right now we're the only ones who really work for us other than our manager and our booking agent. So we're sitting here like every day from like 9 a.m. into about 7 p.m. working through every single supply chain that feeds Hawthorne Heights until the day that we leave, which is on March 5th. So, but you know, it's awesome and it's fun and I will never complain about it, but we are legitimately working right now on trying to put on a good show. We own our own merch company, so we print our own stuff. So that's going on downstairs in the peripheral. You know, we're organizing our own VIP. We do everything that we can for Hawthorne Heights, which is why we can, you know, it's like keeping your bones rattled every single day. You care about it because you're so invested in it. I can't imagine how much I would care if somebody else was doing all this for me. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
I mean, I might want to be like Dave Grohl, where you just might stroll in and be like, "Hey, you guys get all this stuff set up, and I'll, give me about 10 minutes, and I'll
Yeah.
be ready to sing."
Oh, it must be
But
nice.
but I'm happy to do it this way because you're just so locked in to the moment, and that moment will never pass if you stay locked into it. So that's our rule.
It's funny, as you're chatting, I'm remembering back to when we had our first combo summer of 2024, and that was a big takeaway, is between owning own merch, doing everything yourself for the most part. I don't think a lot of young bands could do that, and a lot of older bands don't want to do it. So kudos to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I feel exactly the same way. Like, but I think that young bands wake up one day and they don't realize how they're supposed to be earning a living doing it, and
Right.
they find themselves in an in-between spot. Do I get a job in between tours? Do I start a family? Do I do these things? But they don't really know how their business runs. And that's kind of the most important part is how do you keep your band afloat and to keep your life afloat, all while just trying to do something fun and not feel like you're trying to gouge your fans at every, turn of the road. To find that happy balance is really that's where the sweet spot is for your personal life. So that's just we realized long ago that like the one thing that we can't control or change is the music industry and how it just is wild, but we can control what we do within our business, which is knowing how to earn a living at it and really just trying to be artists at heart, business owners at heart, and try to like work as hard as we can at the one thing that we truly love, which leads us back to our family. But it's hard because, like a lot of people, they don't know, they just want it to happen. And like it can, but it's not going to happen unless you're doing everything you can for it. I wish I could say that you could just write a song and release it and you're done, but that's not really how it works because everybody's
Nope.
doing that.
Yes,
You got to
so many.
yeah, you got to find your little bright spot. And like I always say, if you can write a song that can change your life, it can change somebody else's life. And that should only be the goal. The only goal is to write something that moves you, not write something that you think will move somebody else. Because then you're like you're performing. You know what I
It's
mean? Like,
performative, 100%.
yeah.
I couldn't
So
agree more.
you gotta try to move yourself first because the fans know.
Yeah, they can tell.
Yeah, they'll find somebody else that genuinely makes them feel something.
Well, and that's a great point. If you're not putting in, the real thing, and you're just kind of showing up and going through the motions, the fans can tell. People can tell when you're taking stuff and you're playing shows, half-assed. You're just writing songs and don't want to do any of the actual grinding. You have to grind, and you have been grinding for 20 plus years doing the Hawthorne Heights thing, and I think it's bared out pretty well. I mean, people there's, as you say, a small corner of the world, the internet, whatever, that is very into that, and it's because you've put yourself out there, through the music from day one, I would say.
Yeah, and I think the thing with us is you're always going to get authenticity. That's just the Midwest and who we are. Sometimes those will be massive moments. Sometimes everything's like really connecting. And then there'll be moments where you release something, you'll be like, man, what did we do? What could we have done better? Because we're feeling it, but maybe other people aren't feeling it as much as we do. And you got to take it on the chin every once in a while. You know what I mean? You walk through the music industry, you get a black eye every once in a while, and you got to like pivot, and you can't be afraid of that. And I think that that's one of the things that we've always done. You start off I call it the death rattle of selling physical music. Back in 2004, we sold 1 million copies of an album that was written in a basement in Ohio that no one should have ever cared about. And we sold 1 million shiny little discs.
It's so amazing.
And that can't happen anymore. And that's like, it's kind of sad that it can't happen. And it's kind of sad that like you look at things as false quantifiers, like a song going viral on TikTok for no reason, but can you replicate that magic over and over and over until it means that people actually like your band? I think that that's kind of the hardest thing to do right now, which is why it's easier for us because we had to physically grind out
100%.
sales, and then you were using everything else is like is a fun tool. Like you're on MySpace because you're connecting with your fans in real time, and that was a very special moment. But it didn't really. You weren't constantly just trying to sell people things. Do you know what I mean? Like you were actually like you were on the road selling CDs. Best Buy was selling, emo CDs for $5.99 on the end cap. You were hearing commercials on MTV and Fuse and stuff like that. The MySpace connection was really just that direct connection to your fans. You weren't sending them links to your web store and stuff like that. You weren't
Didn't
like
exist then. Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't a thing. I never. It's funny. I'm glad you pointed this out
too, right? I mean, no algorithm getting in the way.
nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. I remember everyone felt at your fingertips in the MySpace era, and I don't remember ever getting sold to. I mean, there were updates of shows, and you could have your songs up there. I miss MySpace, actually. Has anyone ever said that? I miss MySpace. Throw it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the cool thing about it was that you yourself as the fan were a tastemaker. So like you wore that, that top 8 like a badge of honor. So like, and you were spreading, like you were the algorithm. So like
100%.
if you had enough of people across the world that were putting that into your top 8, those people were listening to that song, going to shows, buying albums, all naturally, all organic, and there was no tricking it. Nobody thought to like create a bot to like have a big MySpace page. Like it wasn't a thing. And I'm sure in the death rattle of MySpace it was, but like at that point we were locked and loaded. We were one of the first bands at that time period to have over 1 million MySpace listeners, and it was a big driver for us because we communicated with our fans. Because major labels didn't really see it early on, because you're not going to get like, I don't know, you're not going to get Sting to be like posting on MySpace. It was like a movement of the underground scene, and like it was just cool because you really had that going right into Warped Tour 2005, which is why all of those bands were just like, people didn't know what to do. The radio was like, we're not playing any of this stuff. They don't need us to. We better get on board or figure it out, because that's where the scene is moving right now. It was almost like I compare it to the grunge movement. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
Like hair metal was like massive. Like it goes from Guns N' Roses instantly to Seattle. It's like rock music was only like in arenas. It was as big as it could be, and people were like, does this suck now?
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
Nirvana comes along and it's like, wow, this is like 4 chords and just dudes thrashing on stages and like being wild. That's kind of what, the emo pop punk movement of the early 2000s, it was like grunge had become so dietary. I call it grunge zero.
Nice.
Like, so like in the late 90s, early 2000s, you'd just in 10 short years, you'd went from like the raw power of a band like Nirvana to, let's say, Matchbox 20 or Lifehouse or something like that, which is all rooted in the watering down of grunge and the blending of grunge and alternative into a spot where it really had to be singles oriented. And I have gotten no problem with any of those bands. You know what I mean? They're great bands. They had great songs and everything,
sure.
but it was coming from a certain period where I think that it needed to reverse course again and like get down and dirty and get like gritty and get raw and like get out of the $1 million studio and into the basement again. And like it repeats like that cycle constantly repeats. Just like in 2004, when all that stuff was happening, you flash forward maybe 5 years, and it's starting to get really slick and melodic again.
Yep.
Which is not a bad thing. But, like it went from, a band like, let's say, The Used or Thursday or something like that into like awesome bands, but like Boys Like Girls. Do you know what I mean? Like totally different. Yeah,
Very polished,
but awesome. And like great songs. I love that band. But in 5 short years or whatever, you get that. And then, maybe another 5 years after that, here comes the Wonder Years. And we're swinging. We're coming out from a New Jersey basement or a Philadelphia basement. And we're singing about our thoughts and feelings again. And like, it's just a cycle and it repeats and they're all great things. Like I'll never bash a band for writing a great song under their own circumstances. And the best thing about music is it's all encompassing. And like I love 1994 Weezer just as much as I love 1999 Blink 182. You know what I mean? Both of those things are incredible for their own way. And then I absolutely love people like, singing about literally themselves in their hometown and connecting with people that don't live anywhere near there. But the sentiment of just trying to get the fuck out of here. Right. It's really tough to do that on the radio. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really tough to do that. Like, man, we really got to get out of this $1 million studio. We really have got to get out of the Ritz-Carlton. You know what I mean? There's something to be said about getting out, exploring the world, youthful energy, yearning, that sort of thing. That's what attracts me to music. Like if you listen to Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA, there's a song on that called No Surrender. And that is Bruce Springsteen singing about that. One of the biggest artists in the world, and he's still finding a way to be like, we're just these dudes in this garage band. We got to get out of here. Still singing about it, and it's incredible. And I think that's what we're missing a little bit now.
We need that again. It needs to come back, and there hasn't been a platform for it yet. And I always, while you're speaking, I'm trying to think of how would that happen. I mean, it can't be TikTok because TikTok gets people paying attention to that and are forcing bands to maybe do more there to try to go viral, where we need something like a MySpace to come back and, shine a light on those bands that are in the basement that are coming out, trying to get out of where they're at and make a name for themselves.
Yeah. And I think that the love of music and the love of the scene finds a way. There's always outliers, and those outliers are what create the scene to flip again and make it special again. Like out of nowhere, you got a band like Hot Mulligan. Like they're not like on the radio. They're not doing any of that stuff. They're just pure organic connection. And when people are hearing it, they're feeling it. And that's what it is. Like a band like Movements or The Story So Far, they have their thing happening that like I don't know that they could get much bigger on the radio and MTV and stuff like that, because it's so locked into who they are, and people like who they are as much as they like their songs and everything. And I think it's so authentic and organic that it's really tough to lasso that and harness it for like a massive label to, like it would probably squeeze it and ruin it. But yeah, those are bands that are just like, I think, come out of nowhere because they connect. And they connect because it's how they feel. Like they're just, no matter what, they just feel that way. So the music comes out that way. So people are like, this is real. This is authentic. I love it.
People can sniff it out. I love this combo, JT, because it kind of accidentally picks up right where we left off with you last time. We did the 20 years of silence. We talked about going gold and platinum. And so what you were just talking about in like the mid 2000s, the scenes exploding, that's when you guys were writing If Only You Were Lonely, which turns 2006. Yeah. So it turns 20 this year.
A couple of days from when we're recording right now. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is insane. And I remember from the first combo we had with you, how, I mean, I guess it's fair to say that like the success of that took you guys by surprise a bit, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. I'm not talking out of school. I'm like, that's how I remember it.
Yeah. We had no idea what we were doing. Just writing these songs in a tiny town in Ohio, writing about stuff we loved and stuff that we hated, and that raw emotion of trying to evoke change within yourself, I think is what has always kind of driven us. There's not a lot of external factors in Ohio. So it's a very small state with a very small music scene. So, like we were having to make our own rules and nobody was coming to like knocking down our doors. We were knocking down theirs. And that's the only way that we knew how to do it. And we've never given up. And we didn't expect the success, but we were happy with it and we knew how to harness it and we knew how to not give up. And those are like, it's how you would work any hardworking job, any blue collar job that like, if you care, if you show up every day, and if you offer a unique perspective, that's really all you can expect to do, which is, I think, is the most important part for me anyway.
So you're coming off this massive success and you've got to write this next record and you're still trying to knock down doors, I would imagine. Do you feel like you've knocked down some and now like, okay, we know what we're doing? Or are you like, oh shit, we gotta follow this up?
No, man, I think that I personally found out that you never know what you're doing. And as long as you're searching and on the quest, you're doing the right thing. So, coming off of 2005 Warped Tour, the golden year, the biggest year, 35,000 people sold out everywhere. Biggest crowds you'll ever play for. The scene was as big as it could ever be. I'm coming off of that, maybe mid-August or something like that, getting married first week of September, going into the studio 3 weeks after that. So for me, it's a chaotic time in my life because I'm being kind of fractionalized. I really want to be there for my wife, obviously, at our wedding. I'm coming off of, Warped Tour, like, just being on the main stage, very first time you ever play Warped Tour. So that rattles your brain. We're playing in front of the biggest crowds we've ever played to, and they're singing every word. That rattles your brain. And you're trying to like balance that with your home life and getting married to somebody that you love very much. And that to me, that steeped a lot into If Only You Were Lonely. My feelings of going from working in a convenience store to being on the cover of magazines in a year, to going from being in a local band to selling a platinum record in 18 months or something like that. And the success can be lonely because you're always around people. And sometimes that just depletes you. And sometimes you're expected to be like on and you just don't have it. And I mean like conversationally or like at a VIP, you're just drained, you're juiced. You can always usually find it on stage because that's like performing, the crowd is there. That's kind of it's like working out. It's your time to like erupt and just like let it all loose. It's those moments where you have to be around somebody on a tour bus 24 hours a day and then go into a sound check with 30 people in the venue and then go into a VIP with 100 fans who need you and only get to see you in that moment. That can really, really cause you to withdraw internally. And that's where the burnout begins. And I think that we were all experiencing it for the very first time, just for a couple of weeks there because of the pressure. So you're coming, you're living the dream and we understand that. And it's never a negative time period. But now you have pressure to follow up something that you didn't think was going to be successful anyway. And you have to figure out, do we go happier, more singles based, more poppy? Because where's the ceiling for this thing? Or do we go heavier? Because we've always had heavy influences, but how heavy are we? Are we under oath pushing the boundary? Are we Silverstein, somewhere right in the middle? But except I don't have those capabilities. Like I'm not a screamer like Shane. I'm singing. Casey's screaming. Like we're or more of a two-pronged attack. So, you know, you got My Chemical Romance really playing up the theatrics of the moment, one of my favorite bands because of it, but that's not who we are. We had to figure out how to maintain, how to be Hawthorne Heights every step of the way, and to push our strengths instead of trying to do what somebody else was doing. That was the hardest thing back then because you're so young. You're so,
Yeah.
everybody wants a bite, everybody wants a piece. The label has thoughts, the agents have thoughts, the managers have thoughts. So we really walled ourselves off into our little tiny town. And we made our producer come to us instead of going to New York City to him. And we said, we're writing this thing and finishing this thing in Ohio, and you're going to have to deal with it. And then we will go record our record with you. So I attribute that to like the lasting effects of If Only You Were Lonely. We wrote that thing here. We brought New York City to us, and then we went to record it in Hoboken, New Jersey, right across the river from New York City. And there's so much of us in it. And there's so much, like, it really is an album based on isolation and frustration. And I think one thing that we really wanted to sneak in there for ourselves is the opulence of Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness by the Smashing Pumpkins. Even though it does not sound like that, there are little nods to it that we are putting in for our own personal, like, listening pleasure, like whether it's adding some strings to things or adding little tiny piano parts, expanding on bridges and stuff like that.
Creating a landscape, like you're creating a landscape.
Exactly, very cinematic.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like, that was one of the major differences between The Silence in Black and White and If Only You Were Lonely. One was, recorded in the winter, staying at a Red Roof Inn, $20,000 budget, all in, sleeping on floors at the record label, and just trying to get it done. And the second record was about having a little bit more to work with, so we were able to be a little bit more comfortable and really expand the process. And my thoughts are exactly that. When I'm writing these lyrics, you're going to get exactly what I'm feeling at that time period. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But at this time period, loneliness had really taken hold. And my response to that is, why do I feel so isolated and feel so alone if I'm playing to 35,000 people a night and I'm marrying the person that I love? Why am I lonely? Where is this feeling coming from? Why do I feel so isolated when I'm surrounded by human beings at all times? And you got to dig into that. And that's kind of what the entire album is about me feeling like I'm on the outside looking in and being a spectator of my own life. Now that I constantly have an audience and people are like, needing me to deliver. I've never had that up until that moment. No one's ever needed me personally to deliver. How do you do that? How do you sell something that is inherently you? That's where I think the hardest part about being an artist is are you truly writing about yourself or an experience that you've had or somebody that you love have? Or are you writing what you think people want to hear from you?
It's a delicate dance.
Yeah, I think that goes back to our conversation about authenticity. And I've always felt like you, Hawthorne Heights, has been very self-aware, and you weren't trying to make, in this moment it sounds, you weren't trying to make The Silence Part 2. You weren't trying to be the poppy version of that band. You were trying to, this is what we feel right now, and I'm gonna tap into that and give you that. And hey, come to find out, those songs are also fucking amazing. Like, they did really well. It's a bang of a record, front to back.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I do think that it's more of a complete thought than The Silence in Black and White. I think The Silence in Black and White is raw emotion. And I think that it is about the yearning of giving up on music because you need to find something else. Maybe you're getting a little bit too old. Maybe you're feeling like you want to move on to other parts in your life. When you get to your early 20s, you start to think about your mid 20s and you start to think, well, nothing has happened. I need to go back to college or something. And it's about that, like for me, it felt like the end. And then it happened. And then I got to finish that complete thought while working on the record as it was happening. So all of that is a lot of in the moment, in your face, like reality. I was able to like kind of harness the next year and a half and isolate it into one emotion of stark, cold-blooded loneliness. And that's kind of why. So you were able to, like, one is like just an array of emotions, scatterbrained young kid trying to figure out life. Like now, like we have all these words that we can use that instantly enlighten us. Like what the dangers of stress and anxiety and mania and all of these things. But we didn't talk about emotion in those days at all. And like our parents weren't very good at understanding these things. So like we had music as therapy.
Absolutely.
We were just doing it because we had to. So I think now, like if I were to write those records, I don't know, man, maybe they might have been the poppiest things in the world because I understand why I'm panicking and why why my brain feels like it's moving so fast over very basic things. And it's like when you're overstimulated, like right now we're working on a new album, we're working on an old album, we're touring, we're in the studio, we're in manufacturing mode and pre-production mode. Like now I have the ability to say, all right, I understand why I feel maybe a little bit like my brain is on fire because you're working on so many different things. Back then, you just felt like somebody lit the fuse.
Yeah, it was all new, right?
Yeah.
You were learning and reacting in the moment. And
yeah.
I just dial back to that era. You guys come out with this first album. It explodes. You're young. Did you feel like there was almost a camp that was like kind of waiting for the fall off? Because the album
for sure.
Yeah, right? I mean, and that's like you say, the pressure, not only from within, but from, we'll call it the suits and all that. Everyone else has got a stake in it. And no one can prepare you for that unless you've gone through that. Maybe athletes get it.
Yeah.
Creatives get it. But unless you've been through it, I mean, I would like to think I would, know what to look out for, how to handle it. I wouldn't. I would
especially
have no
not at
idea.
that age. Especially not at that age.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, like in the music scene at that time period, was competition, whether forced or unforced. Do you know what I mean? Like
100%.
Because you had 5 or 6 record labels that were all finding some really good bands out there that were striking a chord that, like, it's not like it is now. Like right now you can look at a playlist and it just groups everybody together and it's like a genre and stuff like that. Back then, you were just looking for bands that felt real and you didn't know where they belonged or anything like that. And like, because if you look at like what you consider the quote unquote emo movement, like we don't really have a lot in common with, let's say, Under Oath. You know what I mean? Like we're both, we're kind of polar opposite bands, but we're lumped in together. They've always been chasing something different than we're chasing, and that's how it should be. That's what makes them Under Oath, and that's what makes us Hawthorne Heights.
They're only chasing safety, JT. I had to say it.
And they're still chasing it, I think. One of my favorite bands because of that. They're chaotic, man. I love it. I love that they will keep you guessing, and it's incredible because of that. But back then, you're dealing with like record labels, and in 2004, you're just releasing whatever you give the record label. They're not like, dude, I don't know, man. I don't hear a single. That's not the world that we were all living in. They were like, yeah, this sounds pretty good. Let it rip. You go to 2006 when this album came out, you got more expectations because now is the label saying, hey, we need another million here, or this is a failure.
Fuck.
You know what I mean?
What?
And like, it's not like, I don't know, we're not like Madonna. You know what I mean? It's not like we don't have it. And by the way, there are no songwriters. Now the world works in a totally different way, for better or for worse. Like back then, we're not using it. We are writing the songs. Nobody is helping us. Nobody, like, there is no like, hey man, let's send them off to this guy and let's get a hit, and then they can have all the album tracks that they want. So everything that you hear from us is authentically Hawthorne Heights, for better or for worse. Could you go to somebody that is like a cold-blooded killer in the studio and just can harness you and know how to like get the best out of you, and distill it into 2 minutes and 45 seconds, instead of you thinking Ohio is for lovers needs to be 4 minutes and 9 seconds? Those are moments that like happen now. You would just send somebody to like a song guy and be like, hey, there's something here, man, but like let's make this like special. Let's make this a home run. There was none of that back then. We're just in the studio, like doing it and hoping we strike a chord somehow, some way. And arguably, like, I still think the Silence in Black and White has technically sold a bit more due to the time period of 2004, 2005, like that, like there was just it's incredible how the difference of 2 or 3 years can make in the physical music community.
100%.
You know what I mean? Because
and those are the years where it shifted.
Exactly. So like, I truly think if it was reversed, like you'd probably gotten double out of If Only You Were Lonely, because it's just so much more of a complete album with guys who understood what they were doing. And that is why it's way more in theme with itself. If you listen to it as a whole, there is something happening there that connects songs to songs, and it all feels the same. And there's a darkness that is happening throughout it, that even the poppier sounding songs, like even a song like Saying Sorry, our second verse is almost entirely screamed. Like, you would never do that. And we did it because that was our nod to being as heavy as we wanted to be in that moment. We didn't think, dude, the radio's never going to play this. Like, I have to sing right there. It can't be the screamer. We were just like, nope, we're going to do what we want to do. And if people come along, that's great. And if they don't, I guess we're not going to get played by, whatever radio station. That was never the goal for us. Like, it really wasn't. Now, if they wanted to, sick. That's awesome. Yeah. And they did. Because the music scene got so big, but it wasn't because they really saw Hawthorne Heights as like the next whatever. It was more like, man, this band is big without us. We better at least give it a shot and see what happens here.
Speaking of the internet and how the scene changed drastically, music in general, not just the scene that you come from, was the internet and the the file sharing, was that a huge concern for you while making this and putting it out?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like that time period, like, it's funny because, I'm watching these old home movies, and we just posted about this. We found this little clip of me trying to fucking download a song from iTunes at the exact, and this would have been 2006. So that's me trying to physically pay for a digital file on the internet. So basically the year before that, you're dealing with like LimeWire, Napster, things like that. And that's fine. But you didn't realize how quickly it would go digital. And that was, iTunes trying to capture a moment of like, hey, man, we got to find a way that's not CDs. And that was their way. And obviously you flash forward 10 years and you're like, how did you, Apple, who owns the phone, allow Spotify to come into your home and just decimate you? Like how, like, it's like Blockbuster telling Netflix, like, it's just not really going to be a thing, man. I just don't see. I think people are going to want to hold on to these very cumbersome discs and have them
take way too much space.
Yeah. So, but that's a game of inches too. You know, technology was a massive thing at that exact moment. And you flash forward and it's like, you know, you didn't really have the metrics to understand what quantified a physical release versus a digital release or anything like that. And like, to be honest with you, all these bands are probably still big because we were downloaded so much.
Absolutely.
And we're probably like, if we had this same success, but in the 90s, we'd be millionaires for sure. You know, there would be no workmanship. It would be like, dude, you guys just sold 10 million records and you spent $20,000 making a record. Here, you're set for life. But slightly different era, and you know, it changes. And then you flash forward a little bit, 2006, you probably, for every one album you're selling, you're probably getting 4 downloaded.
Yeah.
And you know, like, you're getting it in musical discovery. So you're not getting like, I mean, our record label, you know, was notorious for maybe not giving what you're supposed to get anyway. So
100%.
I don't know that it would have made a drastic difference in our lives financially. I don't really think of things like that. But just having that number next to you made a difference in like what tours you got, who you could go out with, stuff like that. So I'm sure that a lot of those bands missed opportunities because you're in the underground scene, your music's getting downloaded by young people who are savvy. And but you know, I think it all evens out in the end, is what I'm saying. Like, because as long as they're listening to it, you know, I'm not going to go full Lars here.
Right.
But you know, like, that does make a difference, and it does hurt somebody's livelihood. But at the same time, does it expand it? Does it make more people come to shows? Does it make more people like just listening to you in general and spreading that word and stuff like that? Like, who knows? I don't have the answer, but I choose to not dwell. But technology as a whole, absolutely, that was a moment where it really started to become a factor and become an issue. And you were worried about things like, holy shit, what happens if this leaks?
Yeah.
You know, like, it was a moment, and you were always scared every time you were going to release something, probably from like 2006 till 2008 or 9 or something like that. And then it was just like part of commonplace, you know, like, you're just like, yeah, this is definitely going to leak. Who cares?
I think it speaks to the strength of the bands that came out of that wave, that we're still doing it after and still doing it today. Because I almost feel you have two things working against each other, right? You get the scene that's as big as ever, Warped Tour, Taste of Chaos. You get a lot of bands of your ilk going major. So that's the rising.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the technology piece. It's not only downloading, but it's now you can buy a la carte. iTunes Music Store came out in like 03, 04, right?
Yeah.
So you have these things working against each other that some bands just didn't make it out of it, you know?
No, they didn't. And like, you know, there were I would say there was very few bands from this scene that hopped to a major where it actually worked.
100% agree with that. Yeah.
And, you know, Fall Out Boy would be a great example of, it just worked. And that's cool. And it's probably because, you know, they had the right pieces for it to work. You know, they're a band that like naturally worked better that way. And, you know, there's tons of bands where like, you know, they hopped up there for a second. I don't know if they were happy or unhappy there. You know, like, like the Starting Line, you know, one of my favorite bands, like, when they hopped up, I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing for them in their career. I don't know what the difference would have been had they stayed, but you know, it happens, you know, like, and like, the grass is always greener till there's AstroTurf, you know what I mean? Like, you really don't know. But you know, the music scene was galvanized within itself. So like, there's always going to be this sellout label, and there's, you know, anytime anybody jumps to like a major label, like now, like, all bets are off. There's no, like, nobody cares about that sort of thing.
No one gives a flying F about any of
No,
that. They
but
really
back-
don't.
More. Yeah.
Yeah, but back in 2000, the early 2000s, people cared
Big
what
time.
was on a major. They cared if you used backing tracks because it wasn't a thing in our music scene at all. They cared if you used songwriters because it wasn't a thing at all. Now, and like kind of rightfully so, you're just chasing a dream. And if that needs more people in the room that aren't necessarily just you and your friends, that's not a bad thing. Like if you're looking at like, I don't know, let's take the song Boys of Summer by Don Henley. That was written by Mike Campbell of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. So connected to that song, you had Tom Petty, Mike Campbell, and Don Henley of the Eagles. That seems better than just me and my friends. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Oh yeah.
And that's a timeless song. So like, I feel like as long as you're chasing things for the right reason, you can have some other people in the room. Who told you that it had to be just you and your friends from high school that are unqualified to do almost anything, but you have to write a song of a generation?
That's a good point.
Like, doesn't that seem unfair to when you're also competing with, let's say, Mariah Carey,
For
who
sure.
might have 12 songwriters in the room getting like every sort of moment of magic? How about give us some help, man? Were these dudes from a basement in Ohio? Just give us a little bit of help here. But at that time period, you were just so like, nope, we don't want anybody in here. It's got to be us. Now you're like, I don't care. Like if if some guy came up to me and was like, hey, I really like your band. I'm a songwriter. I think that I could help out. And I think that I could, help you from your point of view. Who wouldn't want that? Like now the music scene is like so different like back then, like I think that it's because we all grew up so punk. We all grew up
Oh
like,
yeah. You chip on
Yeah,
your
you-
shoulder and all
yeah,
that.
you just grew up like in the grunge era, and then you flash forward, you're listening to Green Day because punk rock just broke. Then you're listening to Blink, and then you have your Fat Records phase, so you like No Effects, and like none of that stuff was involved with anything. And then out of nowhere, like the music industry changes. So I think that it's because we were raised to like be backed into a corner, and the only way that you were going to get something good out of us is if we were really pissed off. And that's usually the best albums,
For sure. You just described me, JT.
I was
Hey.
going to say that's a description of us. I appreciated that.
You
I
get
had my
pissed.
fat wreck phase. Fat music for
Absolutely,
fat
man.
people, short music for short people.
Yeah, and I think that really like that is a lot of us. A lot of us, like if you grew up, let's say that you were in high school in the early to mid 90s, we got to experience the breaking, the second coming of punk rock, seeing it on MTV and then watching it explode and going from like Green Day to like, okay, what else can we put on MTV? Maybe let's try No Use for a Name. Is that going to work? Who knows? Maybe let's try, No Effects, whatever. And, ska hits and then it gets weird for a second. And then Blink hits. And it's like, whoa, all right, we're no longer pissed off at the government or cops, anything like that. We're having fun now. So, and I think that like when you roll all that stuff into one, and then you find out about the Get Up Kids, and you're like, oh shit, we're sad because we're complicated people.
Right.
Now you mash all that up, and that's what really makes I think the 2003 2004 scene. And then you throw a little bit of hardcore in there,
Absolutely.
throw a little bit of Poison the Well in there, that sort of thing. And I think that that's why people are always quick to be like, dude, that's not emo. That's not, like Rites of Spring,
No.
DC area emo. That's not Mineral. That's not all that stuff. Like we all did touch and hear Sunny Day Real Estate at the time period, but we also heard Blink 182. And if you're going to give me the opportunity to play fun and fast, and, that's what I'm going to do. But we love all that stuff. And, it all's got its place, man. And it all finds its way into our music because of our influences.
How was it? Do you see if you test your memory? You write the record, you record the record, you getting the visuals ready, gonna get submitted, it's getting pressed. Did you guys think it was a banger?
I mean,
Lonely?
that's a good question. I don't think that we had the foresight. We were trying to get done.
Right on.
You know, like we were literally trying to get done, but we did have more of a viewpoint of what we were after. And that perspective is what I think was necessary at the time. I definitely did not listen to that record like when I got the master back and be like, dude, buy the yacht. We're set.
Yeah.
Going diamond, baby.
Yeah, no, I did not think that at all. I thought, all right, this is what we set out to do. We did it. It's taking all of the things that I thought were shortcomings from our first album, smoothing those things out and getting them across in a better way. So I think it feels more, I don't want to say polished because it's not. That's not what we were going for. But it feels more cohesive.
I would agree. And complete.
And yes. Yeah. And whereas the majesty and the magic of our first album is that we are just doing whatever we want, and you can feel the chaos within it, and you can feel the melody turn sour, and then you can feel the heaviness, like on a drop of a dime, go to clean, like stuff like that. There's some magic to that. That's built in a basement. You know what I mean? That's built in like 5 guys staring at each other in 125 square feet and being like, right. where are we going next? All right, we have these chords. It can go here. It can go here. It can go here. And it's like us just saying yes. Okay, what do you got? Boom. All right, let's go here. Done. Let's go here. Done. So you're making moves really fast, which creates chaos. If Only You Were Lonely is way more intentional. It's way more, okay, maybe we don't go heavy right here because that's what somebody expects us to do. So let's bring it way down. It was a lesson in dynamics instead of always just, being on 10 at all times. So that really was kind of the lessons. And also on the dumb side of things, learning to play with a click track and a metronome, becoming better because we'd just been on the road for a year and a half. Like those sort of things, being technically better at what we're doing, me understanding the control of my vocals. Like on the Silence in Black and White, like I was going in there with notions on what I wanted to do because, I have a bit of a range that can be low and it can be extremely high, but it can be really soft and delicate at the same time. Kind of like Smashing Pumpkins. It has that shrillness to it, but it can also be very frail and delicate. That's what I was going for, saying, sorry, I'm singing falsetto in the pre-chorus. That's weird, but it's something that I was trying to like kind of get in there to just show a little bit of versatility. And that was the dynamic change that we were looking for, is like, being able to like really hit the chorus like and make it soar by dialing things back and stuff like that, and then going into breakdowns but really going into them out of nowhere, that sort of thing. So I think that's kind of what I attribute it to, is we were learning on the fly, and then we'd figured out exactly who we were, and we were just trying to be the best version of that.
So you were learning on the fly, obviously, with making the music and then figuring out the touring aspect of it. You've now had the fortune of being able to tour on these records again. So you're going out again for the Lonely Tour, which we're talking to you a couple days before you're out on March 5th. And are there things that you're going to do differently? Are there things that you wish you could have done 20 years ago that you're going to do now?
Yeah, and that is exactly cool. What we're set out to do. We're set out to like understand how to unpack this in a very artistic way. Like we're doing things that we've never done before, like using video walls and stuff like that to like make the imagery as powerful as the sonics. We were very deliberate in who we wanted to be on the tour with us. the past couple of years have been a lot of like throwbacks and stuff like that, going out with friends, going out with like-minded bands and stuff like that. This time around, we wanted we wanted a heavier, more chaotic band, which is what Let Live is. And
For
that
sure.
to me is about the chaos in your mind, like being frantic at all times. And then a band called Creeper, who we've liked for a number of years, but that is the dark side of all of this stuff. So we wanted emo to be like expanded. We're like the control in the situation. You know what I mean? Like we're the ones who kind of take a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But Creeper is somebody who is really on the dark, gothier side, but still in the world. And Let Live is a band that is ravishing the stages and like, doing their own thing. But all three bands sound entirely different, and that was but belong together. So that was kind of our thought process on that. And we wanted three bands instead of four or five because we know that you guys need to go to sleep.
Thank you. Appreciate
So
that.
true. Appreciate that. Thank you.
So
I feel seen.
Like one of our main goals was bands got to be on the stage by 9 o'clock. Fans out of the room at 10:30 so they can get home,
Yep.
get, whether they got a babysitter or they just simply got to work the next day. It feels manageable. Anytime you're after midnight, you're like, dude, I'm taking off the next day or I need a hotel.
Yep.
That sort of thing.
True.
So it was very intentional. And like also, the more bands you have, the less it becomes about what you're trying to do. And so we really did want to rest on our own laurels and really try to make it a night of If Only You Were Lonely instead of trying to cram If Only You Were Lonely into a 4 or 5 band bill. So like it was very intentional what we're trying to do. Now, whether it works or not, that's a different story. But we have a lot of tricks up our sleeve when it comes to like hearkening to the past and like all these home movies and stuff that we're going to show fans. And like the stuff that I'll be talking about is really about this isolation that we've all felt and how generationally we're actually better off for understanding the sadness that we fall within. Our parents did not know how to handle it, and the parents before them were too busy with things like war. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, so unpacking all of that stuff is years and years and years of generation. And I think right now, like everything comes at you so fast that you can't really handle it. And I think that this is one of those things that's intentionally supposed to be a night away from the chaos that we all live in. And, we're very cognizant of that like this, we want to give you a night off. We want to give you a night to remember the easier times in your life, even though they came maybe at a time period where you felt like they were hard. So yeah, we're looking forward to it, man. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
March 5th, Lexington, Kentucky. It kicks off and it goes basically through the end of the month, ends April Fool's Day in Little Rock, Arkansas. So you're hitting most of the U.S. It's funny, JT. Are you familiar with the website Concert Archives?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I was we're geeks. We were digging. I was like, who were they on tour with when this album came out? And I noticed you were on tour with Emery, Anberlin, Bleed the Dream in June. Yep. And Tony and I were talking about it. He's like, dude, they're playing a show in June of this year.
Presents. Yeah.
With Emery and Anberlin. I'm like, holy shit.
Yep, absolutely. So we have little moments like that sprinkled out throughout the year that we haven't announced yet. We're also going to places that we've never been in the world to try and like show them the majesty of this album, which is to me, like when you play some of the same places over and over, right? It can be a little bit redundant, but you're playing your own music. So I'm never going to complain about that. But, I think it hits different in Indiana than it hits in Malaysia. And like, I'm down for that adventure. Everybody right now, like every time we post our flyer and we're promoting it, everybody is just basically saying, why aren't you coming to my city?
Of course.
And all I can really say is I feel like after 20 years, you can trust us. There's a leg too. Just relax, man. I know the internet's a fast pace, but trust me, we have a plan. Everybody will be within an earshot of where you live, including Maine, because we're not going to
Nice.
not go to Portland. And like, you know, we're going to get there, but I will tell you it's going to take a full calendar year to get to all the places that we're going. Yeah. But, you know, we're doing over 100 dates 20 years into our career. That's pretty special. You know,
Absolutely.
we're not taking any time off. We're just letting it rip. And the best thing about it is we're going to be focusing on new music and old music at the same time. So instead of putting new music off another year for an anniversary, we've been hard at work in the studio, kind of doing all this at the same time. So that way we can give you something new, something old, and something in between all at the same time.
That's like really exciting as a fan of the band, and both you're coming, you know, up our way at some point, and that you're working on new stuff too. So there's lots to be excited about for Hawthorne Heights right now. This is pretty sick.
Yeah, man, we're giving it our best go. 20 years in, we're not afraid to roll up our sleeves. We're not afraid to get a little bit of you know, plastisol ink on our hands. We're not afraid to you know, give our ears a run for the money, listening to mixes and stuff like that, and we're just gonna like hammer it home. That's it.
So JT, if in 2006 someone came up to you and said, "Hey JT, in 20 years you're going to tour off this album. The crowds are going to be bigger than they are now." What would you say? Would you say, "Hey, you're full of shit," or like, "No, that's the plan"?
I would probably say that's the plan because
Oh yeah,
I'm stone cold sober. I've you know, like I'm a straight edge guy. I haven't had a drink since I was 16 years old. So I'm hyper focused. So instead of like, you know, I'm raw dogging life. There ain't nothing in me other than black coffee and determination. So I wouldn't say I expect it. I would say it's the goal. You don't always
Right on.
make the goal, but I want to play this music and do this as long as we possibly can in every way that we possibly can, because I think that that is what bands should be doing, and that's what artists should be doing, is fighting for their art and fighting for their fans every step of the way.
Hell yeah, that is awesome. I love that.
You guys are the blueprint, man. I think for this world, you put the reps in, you have all the experience, and
You grind.
you have one speed. Like you can't teach that. So like all those ingredients, It's like you guys are the blueprint.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll say that one thing that has always stuck with me, you know, I grew up in a trailer in West Virginia trying to like punch my way out. Very humble beginnings from a place of love, though, you know, divorced parents. Everything always felt like it was falling apart until I was able to take control of my life and make those adjustments and never do those things that I thought would cause derailing and stuff like that. So, you know, one of my favorite artists is Tom Petty, and he has a very powerful quote to me that says, "If you don't run, you'll rust. If you don't just keep going,
I like that.
you know, you'll rust and you'll fall apart and everything will disappear." So I've always kind of used that as a mantra. Like, are we too complacent? Are we sitting still? Are we not pushing our boundaries on the artistic side? Are we not releasing enough? Are we not touring enough? It's never, are we doing too much? It's always, are we not doing enough?
Right on.
That's just where my brain goes. You know, I explain it the best, and I try to explain it to even my band members. Like, I'm just not satisfied. I'm not a satisfied person. I feel like when you get satisfied, you get lazy. And like, I feel like we can always be doing something that can connect with somebody, that can make somebody feel better, even if it's just ourselves. That's the vibe, man.
Yep. That's a mic drop, I think, too. JT, this was awesome.
Boom.
So happy to talk with you again, and excited for the summer and the spring here coming up, and then the summer and the second leg maybe coming up our way too.
Heck yeah. Always good to talk to you guys. Obviously, once we make it up there, let's make it out. I'll get you tickets, handshake in person, hug in person, and like, you know, make a night of it. All right.
Oh yeah. And in 2 years, we'll do 20 years of Fragile Future, right?
We'll see. I don't rule anything out.
Hell yeah.
Or, you know, maybe we're releasing 2 brand new albums in a row, and, you know, we're on top of the charts again, and, The arenas are calling. We're playing where the Lakers play, and it's great.
I love all that. I love all that.
But we'll keep doing whatever we're doing. I promise you that.
Hell yeah. JT,
Awesome. Thank you
so much. We will be in touch. We're taking you up on that.
Great to see you guys.
Good to see you. Thank you for listening to Podio Slave. We are at Podio Slave on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the places that you can find us on social media. Facebook, Podio Slave Podcast. YouTube, Podio Slave Podcast there. Email us at podioslavepodcast@gmail.com. And hey, if you want to become a supporter, click on the link at the bottom of the episode and give us $1, give us $5. It keeps the lights on, keeps us going. We really appreciate that stuff. Thank you.